And this is Shooting from the Lip, episode 369, Round of Sports Shots. Yeah, okay, I had to make sure that was actually the right word. Sorry about that. I am Michele Brown. I'm not Kevin Hale, and for that I am eternally grateful. A little bit of technical difficulties, so I'm kind of at the helm here. We are joined by Jeff Piecoro of UK Sports Network. He's all over the place. Also does some great work at Cincinnati Reds. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Howdy, good.
We have from Cameron Mills Radio and from Cats Talk Wednesday, the one and only Terry Brown.
Hello, everybody.
There we go. And from Girls Beer Sports and Bourbons and Bad Opinions, bourbons, not bourbon, bourbon and Bad Opinions. What could be bourbons? Maybe that's why there we go.
We drink multiple.
Carrie Lewis. Hey, Carrie, how are you?
Sup, y'all?
And somewhere fighting with a malcontent laptop, we have Kevin Hale, who will join us as he can, and we will eventually be joined by Terry's co-host and partner in crime on Cats Talk Wednesday, Vinny Hardy, who is also with Cameron Mills Radio. And I already said who I am. I'm Michele Brown, and I'm with Cameron Mills Radio and formerly of Big Blue Views, and sometime in the future of something else yet to be determined. So here we are tonight, and you have to pardon me for not having a good game plan here because I found out I was going to host about 42 seconds ago. But I think the biggest thing that we want to talk about would, even though you would think, hey, it's a basketball season, we're going to just bypass that for the time being, and we're going to talk football and a historic season for the Kentucky Wildcats with just an incredible win in the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Day, defeating Penn State 24-22. Jeff, just off the top of your head, can you just put into words what that victory meant for the Kentucky football program?
Well, I think anytime you can reach double digits in wins, it's impressive. It's only happened one time since the 50s. That was 1977 when they went 10-1. So, I mean, it's a huge achievement for this team, and it shows you how far this team has come since Mark's taken over. He's done a great job recruiting. You've got better players. And I think that this is a team that no one thought this could happen. Nobody thought they could beat Florida. No one thought they could beat Mississippi State this year. They knocked down a lot of barriers this year, and winning that game over Penn State, I think that kind of announced kind of to the country maybe that Kentucky isn't just an afterthought anymore. I think it'll open some doors in the recruiting world, and there's bigger and better things. I think the future is very bright. You lose a couple of great players. I mean, you lose 16 seniors and a junior, but I think the future is very bright here.
You know, it's funny because the first year that I started following UK football was 1977 because my brother was in the Wildcat marching band, and I kind of got hooked in that because we'd want to see maybe if we ever saw him on TV. But that being my first year, I'm like, wow, their football team is as good as the basketball team. I did not know I would live my entire adult life before I saw that kind of season again. Carrie, you and I have talked about this football team quite a bit. How fitting was it that when it came down to brass tacks at the end, that Josh Allen and Benny Snell, they basically put this team on their shoulders and willed them to win?
They really did. And I honestly, in my opinion, think that they will probably go down as two of the best, if not two of the best players in UK football history. I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of UK football. I have sat through the good, the bad, and ugly of UK football. I was at the Outback Bowl the last time we saw, we played Penn State and saw them get beat. I was there when we beat Alabama. I was there when Stevie got loose. I was there when we beat LSU. I was there for the Bluegrass Miracle. I sat through a 6-0 UC slog in the rain game when nobody else was there but the band at Commonwealth Stadium. And more proud of this team I could not be. I cried. The CFO and I both cried. I'm going to say that right. I'll tell you that right now. I'm tearing up right now about it. I was so proud of this team. And the fact that UK football is on the map. You know, UK football was such I guess an afterthought, a joke of the SEC. You know, I saw Billy Jack Haskins play his ass off against Tennessee with a bum shoulder, ran right at me to score a touchdown. We were standing on in the end zone, you know, on that fence before they closed in Commonwealth Stadium with the band. And I'll be damned, we should have beat Peyton Manning that day, and we didn't. I was there for the Chris Doering game, you know, when we should have beaten Florida at the last second, we didn't. And this win, it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me.
Well, I can tell you're almost tearing up again.
Yeah, it really.
And I feel that, man, because that's exactly where I was on New Year's Day. It was just when we knew, when Vinny got that last first down, and you knew that it was sealed. It was so emotional. And Terry, I know you and I kind of banged the same drum about trying to change the narrative that Kentucky is just a basketball school. and some days it feels like a losing battle, but I kind of feel like maybe we got a giant step forward on Tuesday. What do you think?
Yeah, like Jeff said, you get to 10 wins. That's a huge benchmark when you look across college football. And for this program to go from 2 wins to 5 to 5 to 7 to 7 to 10, the folks that are out there looking for progress, the progress is right in front of your face. What I liked about this season was there wasn't anything gimmicky about what Stoops and company did. It wasn't air raid. It wasn't anything. It was just smash mouth, punch you in the mouth football. And that's how you have to win the SEC. And that's what they've done. So you have to just look at where the program was and where the program is. And as a Kentucky fan, you have to be emotional about it. I don't know if there's a fan base in the country that has been as supportive and not had the wins, you know, to account for it. The fans deserved it. Coach Stoops deserved it. Those kids that signed with the 5-win, 2-win Kentucky team, they deserve it. This was the culmination of a lot of years of hard work.
Hey, Michele, if you don't mind, I just wanted to add one thing. After the game was over, we were down in the locker room area, and Mitch Barnhart and I were talking. And he said, this game is the reason I hired Mark. When he came to me, all the other coaches that he had talked to about the job when they interviewed him and stuff was talking about, you know, a wide open offense. We're going to score a lot of points. We're going to do this. And he said, Mark came in and said, in this league, you cannot win unless you have a great defense. And he goes, I'm a defensive guy. I will hire an offensive mind to run the offense, but you win. If you look at the great teams that have come out of here through the years, it's been a defensive-minded football team. And he said, that's why I hired the guy, and look where we are today. So,
Well, thanks for that. That's I've been a believer in Coach Stoops since the beginning, and I've been ridiculed by some and called delusional and sunshine pumper and other names that are not safe for prime time. But it's a vindication for everybody. And now that we've got Vinny Hardy, who we gave him a little bit of an introduction before he got here, but now that he's here, Vinny, what was just your initial reaction when you realized that the Cats had pulled it off and had finished this really a near storybook season?
Well, glad to be on with y'all. Sorry I'm late. It was similar to how I felt when they won 8 games for the first time in the regular season, when they won 5 SEC games. All this is the first time. This happened for the first time that I've been able to remember it. We remember them on New Year's Day 20 years ago against Penn State and up 14-3 and how ecstatic that feeling was. We know it didn't play out that way for the rest of the game. But all this stuff that's happened since 77. When that 77 season ended, I was 16 days old when they went 10-1 that year. So to see it happen and you're old enough to embrace it, process it, bask in the glow of it, it's just unbelievable.
And to me, and a lot of people will say that the big play it was so appropriate that the winning touchdown was ultimately scored by Benny Snell and him breaking the record and being now the University of Kentucky all-time leading rusher and doing that in 3 seasons, which is no small feat. But to me, I thought it was perhaps more fitting that what really sealed the deal was that last drive when we had to have those first downs.
Yes, you had to You had to convert third down, and they did.
And everybody knew Ben was going to get the ball, and Penn State couldn't do a darn thing about it. And it was like what Vinny said after the game, I came in here fighting, so I had to leave fighting. And well, here I am. Got the chill bumps again. Like I said, it's kind of silly how sports can bring out such emotion, but I just could not be any happier for those kids. But I kind of think I wrote an article I put up on Cameron Mills Radio yesterday. It was my open letter to Mark Stoops. And one thing I did not include in the letter, and I perhaps should have, and Jeff, I'll let you comment on this, but at Media Day, and I've said it on this show several times and on my own countless times, that Media Day, you knew something was different this year. And you knew from the players, you knew from the coaching staff that they had a secret. They knew something that the rest of us didn't know. And then as we prepared for Mark's address to the media before we went out for pictures and meeting the players, was when he announced that Josh Paschal had been diagnosed with cancer and that John Schlerman was also battling cancer. And I didn't mean it in a morbid way, but at that point I was like, if there was anything to bond this team together, Josh, I mean, you can't find a player on that team that's ever had anything negative to say about Josh Paschal. And I knew then that we were in for something special. And Jeff, I'm sure you've gotten to talk to him some about what that meant to the players to be able to basically to do this for the coach and for Paschal, and that he got to play in the bowl game. I mean, how special is that?
Well, I think that when the season was getting underway, the team, the people inside Nutter Center knew that they had, as you said, something special. They knew they had a team that could compete. They knew that for the first time in Mark's tenure there, they had depth. You know, they had 8 offensive linemen, 9 offensive linemen that they, could rotate in. No one was giving their defense, especially the guys up front, Bohannon and those guys, any measure. And I think they knew these guys could play. Josh was a blow to them. He was going to play on the inside. He was going to be – but I think the guys made that a rallying cry. And John Schlarman is one of those beloved coaches in a long, long time there. These guys would do anything for him. And you saw everybody that had the wristbands, or the little things you wear on your wrist that said, Paschal 4 and Schlarman. And it was just a rallying cry all year. And the one wild card in the whole thing was Terry Wilson. Could he simply manage the game? And he did. He was able to, they didn't rely on him to win games. It was just don't lose the game. But as the season got on, especially these last 3 games of the year, you saw him really blossoming into what's going to be a really good player here in the future. And I think with him at quarterback next year, I know we lose Benny, but you get some nice receivers on the outside. You got a really good offensive line coming back. I mean, there's a lot of pieces there on that offense, and I think that he's going to be finally going to be. And I hate comparing him to Tim Couch or Jared, but a guy that they're going to say, hey, this guy can really play. I'm not putting him up there with Tua yet, but he's going to be a nice player.
Well, yeah, Carrie, you and I were along with one of your Girls Beer Sports cohorts. We were in a group text during the game. And I think it would be safe to say, Carrie, that you all weren't really pleased with Eddie Grant in the first half.
Yeah.
And I told you all to have patience. It was all going to be okay. And I'm sitting here with my sweet tea and relaxed as I could be. So did the third quarter change your feelings about Eddie Grant?
I'm still not 100% sold on him. I think, Terry managed the game okay. We did what we had to do. the key though, if we hadn't have got those third down conversions in the fourth quarter, that defense was gassed. That defense kept us in that game. That defense carried us on their backs. You know, Josh Allen, all those guys worked their tails off, and they were just gassed. The key was getting those two third down conversions in that fourth quarter. If we hadn't have done that, I'm not sure the outcome would have been what we wanted, and you know, we might not be happy talking about it like we are now. I'm not 100% sold on Eddie Grand's play calling per se. I'm not saying fire the guy at all by any means whatsoever, but I'm not 100% sold on his play calling.
Well, Terry, I'll let you go on into this because I'm kind of the opinion that Eddie certainly made some head scratching calls this season, but I think for the most part he actually did the best he could with the tools he had to work with for most of the time. And if your bread and butter is going to be running it up the middle as much as possible, I mean, I think he generally did that. And then, of course, the times he would throw to or attempt to throw to Conrad and the pass would be incomplete, everybody go, why didn't you run the ball? You run the ball. Why didn't you pass? I mean, I don't, Terry, do you feel like sometimes Eddie Graham was kind of damned if he did or damned if he didn't most of the season?
Absolutely. I mean, everybody likes to kick the guy making the calls because everybody's kind of like, you know, if you play Madden, if you play that, you're like, this play always works. Well, that's not how you call a real life game. You do some action to set up another action. And the reason I don't give Eddie Graham the blues is because, number one, if Eddie Graham was terrible, Benny Snell would not be the all-time leading rusher at the University of Kentucky. That just doesn't happen because Eddie Graham doesn't know what he's doing. Also, you have to look at, okay, you know, going away from Benny for a little bit in the second quarter, maybe early in the third. Look at when Benny Snell got his yards. Look at the Vanderbilt game to seal the game. Look at the drive against Missouri to win the game. Look at Benny being fresh enough in the Citrus Bowl to salt away the game. So you do some things in the first and second quarter to set the plate for the third and fourth quarter. And to that, I say he did a great job. It would be criminal if he has Terry Wilson to throw the ball 45 times a game. Criminal. You know, it would be criminal if he ran Benny 50 times a game. You have to balance it out. And how do I know? I'm looking at a 10-3 season. So obviously he was doing something that was halfway right. So I just don't understand everybody always dumping on him. Did I agree with every play? No. But the results, you know, you play to win the game. I mean, that's all he has to say is 10 wins. So
I am right on board with you there. I mean, there was a couple of times in the season I was just like, and I may have even put this in our little group text, Carrie, at one point when I said, as long as Eddie doesn't try to out-cute himself.
Yeah.
and I think, you know, that was probably my main criticism, and it wasn't a huge one or a constant one. But sometimes I think he tried to go gimmicky when it's kind of like when you hear hoofbeats, you think horses and not zebras. And I think sometimes he wanted to throw a zebra out there, and not always the best choice. But we could say the same thing that, yeah, Alabama didn't expect Reed Travis to jack up a 3 yesterday, so they left him open, and that's why Cal wanted him to shoot a 3. Well, you know.
But coaches do that. You look at
Right.
Pete Carroll in the Super Bowl not going to Marshawn Lynch. Coaches do that. They tend to outsmart themselves. So I don't think that's unique to Eddie Graham. That's just coaches in general.
Right.
That's just people. That's people in general.
And that's true. And I'm going to be interested to see if next season he lets Terry maybe come up to the line, maybe check out of some things, maybe not be so tight on the reins since Terry's got a year under his belt now with this. You know, it could be a possibility. Maybe we'll see.
Man, and I had a real big thought there, and then we got off on something else because I had a perfect question for Vinny. Oh man,
Sorry.
That's okay. Well, I'll make up a new question, Vinny. Paul, like I said, didn't have my post-it note. Like I said, wasn't preparing to be running the show here. So, thanks for that, Kevin. One thing that maybe that people didn't, but there was a lot of angst last year in Music City Bowl when Benny Snell got ejected for absolutely no good reason. But if we look back at that now, if he had played in that game, he would have gotten his record before Tuesday's Citrus Bowl. I mean, I think that was a whole lot cooler to do it in the Citrus Bowl than to have maybe gotten it against Louisville. I mean, yeah, they were dog food this year. But I'm not throwing any shade down I-64. I want to be very clear. I'm not doing that. I did that yesterday with my "you can't call them Card Nation" tweet. But Vinny, whew, would you agree that it was more special for Vinny to get the record in his final game in the final scoring drive?
It's a Hollywood ending the way that worked out. You mentioned him not finishing the Music City Bowl last year. We also got to remember that he didn't play in 2 games in his freshman year. He could have had this record long before the Citrus Bowl. I mean, if he gets 60 yards in both of those games, that's 120 yards. And that's at minimum. That's going real light that he just gets 60 his first 2 as a true freshman. So it was cool that it worked out right up the gut, 12-yard touchdown. It made for a heck of a call for Tom and Jeff. As a Cowboys fan, Michele, you know this. I said this on our show Wednesday. When Emmitt Smith broke Walter Payton's all-time rushing record, it was a choppy run. He was stumbling and staggering, and you couldn't tell if he was going to get it or not. And Brad Sham was kind of herky-jerky in his call because is this going to be the record? And it made for a difficult call. That was not the case at all with Benny, right up the gut. Pay dirt on top of it was the cherry on the sundae. You couldn't have asked for it. And, of course, it ended up being a game-winning score, too. I mean, you can't make that up.
And I'm glad you mentioned the Cowboys. And even though I've been kind of going through a rough 40 hours or so, Terry, I did not miss the shade that you threw with your backhanded congratulations to Vinny. Congratulations for your Cowboys winning their first game in 3.
What?
The congratulations on winning their 3rd playoff game since the Clinton administration.
Yeah, I'm glad that they won. It was their 3rd playoff win.
Yeah.
Maybe they can go to the Super Bowl for the first time since I've been able to legally drink alcohol. So, I'm excited for them. I'm excited for the Cowboys.
Here's, and this is, I had to give you the opportunity to throw that in. I knew you were just dying to get it in, but that's okay. The Eagles took care of the Bears today, or the Bears took care of the Bears. Why isn't Austin McGinnis playing in the NFL? Can anybody tell me that?
Unbelievable.
But here is the one thing we haven't talked about, and I believe, is it Jeff's turn or Carrie? Is it your turn?
Hey, to Jeff. Let Jeff go.
Okay. That was Penn State's decision to go for a field goal and not go for the touchdown. As much as our fans will criticize Eddie Gran, what is going on in the land of Penn State with that? I mean, that was a head scratcher.
Well, you needed 2 scores. So, you had to have 2 scores anyway. So I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't think. I thought in that situation with that much time left, because you still had over 4 minutes left in the game, and their defense had really stepped it up there in the 4th quarter until that final drive. I mean, we got up 27-7, and I think the Kentucky guys started celebrating on the sideline a little bit and kind of relaxed. Yeah. And then Penn State, being Penn State, boom, boom, boom. So I really don't have a problem with that field goal. if you ask Mark, I bet he would have done the same thing in that situation. So, or Joe Paterno would have probably done that had he been. I guarantee Joe Paterno would have kicked the field goal there. So, I don't know. I mean, that's why it's just like talking about the playoff system. That's why it's so much fun to have these shows like this, because you can, argue and discuss the finer points of why you should have gone for it or not. If you stop them there, then they're forced to score a touchdown. And, it just, I thought it was the right way to go.
It's okay. Well, that's why we've all got different opinions.
Exactly.
I was kind of dumbfounded by that, because I thought that, our defense, as Carrie had noted, they were pretty gassed at that point. And I thought, well, there's no way they don't go for the touchdown at this point and go ahead and get a tie and let it play out.
And I guess too, because it's a bowl game. I mean, it's not like they're playing for the Big Ten championship or the SEC championship. It's a bowl game. That's why I remember, you guys might not remember this, but I remember when I was younger, Pat Dye went for the tie instead of the win, and you're like, what are you doing in the bowl game? You don't go for a tie.
As they said, that's like kissing your sister, right?
Exactly.
Oh man, here I go again. I have got to stop putting my own commentary in, because then I forget the next question. But well, Carrie, I'll let you express your opinion of the going for the field goal versus the touchdown, because I could tell you had some things to say.
Kentucky, 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 Kentucky. I seriously, I was laying on my couch, half hungover, and that was a head scratcher. I was really surprised, but just based on the fact that our defense was gassed. That heat had gotten to our defense a little bit. We had been on the field for a while, and it's a bowl game. I was really surprised. I really feel like, honestly, to tell you the truth, I feel like if Penn State would have gone for it, they probably would have gotten it, just based on the fact that our defense was a little bit tired. So I was surprised, but hey, screw you, James Franklin.
And speaking of which, I don't know who did the update to the Wikipedia page, but fans are just savage, and I'm not sure why it took me 3 days to find it, but Mark Stoops' Wikipedia page had been updated almost instantly, and under the personal section, Mark and his wife Chantel have 3 sons, and the third son was listed as James Franklin, which just like, who's your daddy now, buddy? I guess we're going to look forward to next year, Carrie. There's already, and I think you probably saw Vince Morrow's tweet about the experts are already saying we're going to be down next year. They don't recognize talent coming in. What do you kind of look for next year?
Well, bizarrely, ESPN has us outside the top 25 for this year in their FPI rankings. So you can't pay attention to that. Like Jeff said earlier, with Benny leaving, with Josh Allen leaving, and a lot of other guys, there's going to be some places to fill up. But I think we've recruited enough where it's not just the in-game depth or the game-to-game depth, it's year-to-year. Like there's not another Josh Allen coming down the pipeline, but you can get a couple of guys to fill that role. And when you look at where we are right now, Georgia head and shoulders in the SEC East, but I mean, I don't feel bad about having Missouri come to town or going to Columbia, South Carolina. It could be another 8 or 9 win season. Now, I don't want to get greedy and say that if it is just an 8 or 9 win season, we've regressed. I don't think we're to that point yet, but you have to feel good looking for the 2019 season, looking at the 8 home games. Louisville's still going to be a disaster. Tennessee's certainly going to be winnable. Florida might be a tough one, but it's at home. So you can talk yourself into another really good season. Just, piggybacking on what Jeff said, if Terry Wilson progresses and Eddie Grand's making some calls that we all agree with, you can see this team maybe not being as stout defensively, but maybe a little bit more wide open in the offensive end, and 8 or 9 wins certainly in the cards.
You mentioned the ESPN FPI, and I about midway through the season, after I'd looked at their predictions and what had actually come out, I just renamed that the flawed prediction indicator. There's no science to that, but it was like laughable.
Yeah,
But,
and I don't know how they come up with it and who they predict is going to win and this, that, and the other. But if you look just blind at Kentucky's resume this year, who do we beat? Where do we beat them? I mean, I don't know how you have them outside the top 25. I don't know how you have them outside the top 10.
I just assumed that it was three drunk guys somewhere in a deserted island that just mailed in picks for them. I'm not sure. They had no internet there. They couldn't watch the games. Before we tie a bow on this, I'll go to Vinny for the last question before we move on briefly to basketball. It's kind of funny again to say, briefly to basketball because it's basketball season. But Vinny, I think the one thing, and I know you follow Freddie Maggard, and one thing that he has had as a hashtag on countless tweets has been recruit and develop. And I think, again, you look at Josh Allen, Benny Snell, I mean, they are the poster boys for being not really respected in terms of coming out of high school, but what they've developed into has just been incredible. And I guess who do you kind of see currently on the roster as being maybe the one that we're going to be surprised by, and how important is the development process in terms of other recruits coming to Kentucky?
Well, the recruiting is still better than it has been, for years and years. The success that Kentucky had in Louisville, a lot of defensive guys coming out of there, Night Goff and Weaver and all those guys that are pass rusher types, long 6'6" type guys that, I'm not saying they're going to just jump in and be Josh Allen, but like Terry talked about, getting a couple guys to fill that role, and they can develop into being good to very good SEC type players. I think Brad White has to get a lot of credit. Coach Stoops hiring him away from the Colts, coaching linebackers there. And Josh Allen was solid last year, but he took it to a whole nother level this year, rushing and learning his techniques to get him ready for, his upcoming top 2, 3, whatever draft pick he ends up being. Cavassier Smoke on the offensive side, Chris Rodriguez, Oates, Square. We saw those guys play when Cash Daniel and Jordan Jones had to miss time. So they've gotten some experience. Secondary will have to kind of get up to speed, but it's on the outside, everybody's predicting a huge precipitous drop-off, but it's shaping up to where they're going to still be able to maintain and more so reload instead of having to completely rebuild and climb all the way back from the bottom again.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of the so-called experts miss. There was a lot of stretches in games this year where we're playing with second-string players, and and nobody noticed it. And that's like the stark contrast in years past, that there isn't that, before it was like first string and here's the replacements. And now it's more like
You get
this. Yes, Terry.
Landon Young comes back. AJ Rose, Landon Young comes back. I mean, it's a lot more to be excited about and positive about than maybe the outside analysts want to believe.
I'm kind of okay if they have to play with a chip on their shoulder again next year, because they seem to definitely rally around each other a whole lot more. And I think that you can't overstate the importance of the example that the senior class that they left about, in terms of the players providing that leadership in the locker room and holding one another accountable. They taught the underclassmen how you actually lead a team, and I think that is going to pay huge dividends for years to come.
Culture, culture, culture.
There we go. And now, after this happy, wonderful part of the conversation, we're going to move on to basketball. Who ever thought we would say that? I mean, seriously, that's the culture change right there. that people, well, I made a sarcastic tweet. I certainly didn't mean it yesterday, but at the tail part of the ball game, I'm like, anybody want to talk about Kentucky football for a little bit? 'Cause, Jeff, what in the world happened in Tuscaloosa?
Well, how many 5-star and McDonald's All-Americans Alabama have on their team? Does anybody know? We sure know Kentucky's got about 10 of them. But I don't even know what to say when you look at this team. I know they get better as the season wears on, and that's the way that John makes his team. But the one thing I think that is missing from this team, and it's been this way, how many years has he been here?
This is his 10th season.
10 seasons, about 9 of those seasons. All the guys that he brings in here, and I'm not knocking I mean, they're obviously great players, but when you're a player and you play on the AAU circuit and all the travel teams and stuff like that, you're an elite player and you're playing against the elite players. You are in real offensive games. You know what I mean? It's almost like playing an all-star game every time out. Now you come to a league like the SEC and you say, okay, we've got to get down. We got to play defense here. Defense. What the hell's defense? I don't like to play defense. I score 25 points a game. Well, the problem is every guy you got did that in high school. They don't have a guy on that team that is one of those guys that can get down. And I mean, Higgins is a nice player. Don't get me wrong. Speed and all that. But to me, you need some of those guys that have a chip on their shoulder, like the football team has. You just can't have everybody on the team being an elite player and expect them that they've never had to do it before to dig down when you're in Tuscaloosa or when you're in Alligator Alley or one of these places and dig down and win a football or basketball game. I mean, when they played Duke, those guys, when I was there, it was a great atmosphere. But when Duke came out in the first 2 minutes, every kid's eyes were as big as a dollar, a silver dollar. They looked like a train was coming at them. And they just don't have anybody that's got that chip on their shoulder and is kind of, I'm sorry to say this, a badass on that team. They just don't have it.
Well, Terry, I know that you put an article up yesterday, and when I first read your title or maybe the first opening lines, that it was kind of a Final Four or bust type thing. I'm paraphrasing, of course. I'm like, this isn't the Terry Brown I know. And then I, of course, I was at least bright enough to read the rest of the article. But you do raise some interesting points, and I'd like you to kind of just not read the whole article, but kind of why the main idea of why it is so important for Calipari to get to a Final Four this year.
He's got to get to a Final Four this year, or that vocal minority becomes a larger vocal minority, and he starts to have issues. And I never thought I would see that after 4 Final Fours in 5 years. He's lost some of the base, because a lot of people say toward the end of the year, yeah, they're great, and deep tournament runs are great, but losing to Seton Hall, that's tough. Losing at Tuscaloosa against a mediocre at best Alabama team. And, we've had a lot of those losses the last couple of years. So if he wants to keep on telling us, trusting him and be patient, he's got to get to another Final Four, or I think this offseason is going to be a little bit less fun than he's had since he's been in Lexington.
I guess I said that there's some people that have, I know the thing that was going around yesterday, Carrie, was the people were kind of, and I believe maybe even Roger Hart tweeted something about it, this, when Cal says it's a process, he was calling that, I don't think the word shtick, but I think that was kind of the implied meaning behind that. And is it coach speak, or is it just, it is what it is?
I think it is what it is. And at this point in the season, I see this as a matchup problem. It's matchups. North Carolina, we matched up decent with them because they don't have a lot of big physical guys. Louisville, same thing. They don't have a lot of big physical guys. Now, I'm not saying Alabama has a lot of big physical guys, but they were more physical. And, of course, you've got the requisite, you go into the SEC, you go away, wherever Alabama, and the dude who doesn't hit anything lights you up for 20 in the first half, right? It's expected. I don't know why we don't put somebody on this guy. You should see it in the stats. This guy's going to go off. That's it's precedent, right? I just see this as a matchup problem. I am really afraid to play Tennessee, and I'm not even lying to you, because Tennessee is big, they're physical, and they're tough, and we're just not there yet. We're just not there yet. I just don't see it.
Well, Vinny, I thought, in spite of having played pretty crappy, for lack of a more eloquent term, in the first half, the fact that we were actually up by 2 was kind of impressive. I guess the part that more concerned me than anything was not putting energy or going full guns until the final 2 minutes of the game. And quite frankly, I was very encouraged by the fact that you could be down as far as we were. What was it, 10 with 4 minutes to go? And we had a shot to win the game. So I think, again, I don't think Alabama is as bad as everybody wants you to believe they are, and I don't think that we're that far off as everyone would like us to believe. But that's maybe I'm being a sunshine pumper delusional little twit again. But what do you think on that thought, Vinny?
Well, it's definitely, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it can be. It's definitely a setback after you have 2 nice wins over Louisville and North Carolina. From the SEC standpoint, you start in an 0-1 hole when the league is really good. Tennessee is really good. As Carrie alluded to, Auburn, Mississippi State, you don't want to get yourself in too big of a hole as far as that goes. And Carrie also alluded to Tevin Mack dropping 20 in the first half. He finishes with 22. And to your point, Michele, you're up 2 with this guy carrying the load. He had 20 to 38 points. You're up 2. You think you may have weathered his storm. To me, when Alabama comes out and smacks him right in the mouth with an 8-0 run to start the second half, and now good and well it's a dogfight. That kind of set the tone. Kentucky could have came out. Look, we took Tevin Mack's punches. He dropped 20 on us. Okay, we're still winning. Now impose our will, and that didn't happen. Alabama imposed theirs instead. It was a war. They had momentum, and they were able to take it to Kentucky. You guys alluded to the lack of energy until the end, but that first 4 or 5 minutes where they went off and was up 46-40 right out of the gate kind of set the tone for the rest of the night.
Yeah, and of all games, and God love his soul, Reed Travis has been like the consistent guy all season, and he's absolutely allowed to have an off game, but this was like not the day to have that game. But we will be back in action Tuesday night, and I happen to have drawn the honor to cover that game, so we'll kind of see how things will be now that we have gotten to 10 o'clock, and I kind of have a hard stop at 10, and I have not. Let's see. Okay, I was going to see if Kevin's having internet issues. He's not going to be able to join us, so. I don't know. We could probably go on about basketball, but I don't know that there'd be anything we could say that would really that hasn't been said. If Carrie was drinking bourbon, she could say process 108 times, but that was so 2018. So I guess at this point, this is when I'll give everybody an opportunity for your. As Kevin likes to have your final shot. It can be about UK sports. It can be about any any other sport as you like, but give your final shot, and we'll start with Jeff.
Oh gosh, put me on the spot.
Of course.
I'll say this about basketball. We're Kentucky basketball. Do we really have to make excuses at this point in the season? Should we be making excuses? You lose to Alabama of all teams? Man, that's tough. For UK football, I really think that the pundits are wrong. I agree with you guys. You said, Terry, I think you said 8 or 9 wins next year. I agree. You got 4 games in the bag. Louisville's going to be a mess. But to me, the one game that still sticks out in this season, and I know a lot of people think Louisville's the big game, but to me, I cannot stand Orange. I won't spend a dime in the state of Tennessee. I do not like it. That was, to me, one of the most embarrassing losses in Kentucky football history. That was a bad loss this year. And I think that's the reason a lot of the pundits, especially the guys in SEC Network, don't put us in that upper echelon of the SEC East because of that loss. And until we can get that sour taste out of our mouth, I think the Citrus Bowl helped. But man, that is the one game that still sticks with me in this football season, was that loss, because I hate losing to Tennessee. I beat them twice, and God, I just hate losing to them.
Well, it's not just orange, just that inside of a pumpkin throw-up orange.
Work release orange.
Yeah, they low down, they dirty, they some snitches. Terry, a final shot from you.
Well, with basketball, all is not lost. I was able to cover the Louisville basketball game. It is a rivalry. I'll never say it's not a rivalry, but the only way that game is a story is if Louisville wins.
Yep.
Kentucky wins, ho-hum, the world keeps spinning. Louisville wins, now it's got a little bit of teeth to it. It didn't used to be that way, but 9 wins in the last 11, being there's just a different feel. Like, Louisville fans don't feel they can win that game. So unless they rattle off 3 or 4 wins in a row in the series, it's not going to take it. I always thought it was better than North Carolina Duke myself, but right now that's a tough sell. So if Chris Mack is going to do anything, he's got to find a way to beat Kentucky. Not that I want him to, but it's just not the rivalry that it used to be even 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep.
And Terry, isn't it interesting, if you listen to the U of L fans, how they could lose as many games as they're 2-10 against Calipari at this point, when you count in the NCAA games.
I believe, yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
So how is it that in every one of those games they had the superior coach?
Here's the thing, real quick. They talk about Chris Mack, this game being too big for him. He's got to figure it out. I don't buy that. They think Pitino was scared and got him too tight to play the game. Look, Denny Crum, great coach, underrated, 2 titles, Final Fours, all that. He was 7-13 against Kentucky. Rick Pitino, we know what kind of coach he is. He was like, 6-14 or something like that. As I told Vinny on our show on Wednesday, if Chris Mack can just be 500, I'll chip in to build a statue for him in front of the Yum Center. If he can just be 500 against Kentucky, because no coach has done it. They've won championships. They're all this and that, but they can't beat Kentucky. Even when we're terrible, like in 2013, they win by 3. The Monk team lost by 3. When Louisville wins, that's the surprise.
Well, and you're dead on with that one. I can't disagree with anything you just said. Carrie, your parting shot.
I've been through Bill Curry. I've been through Hal Mummy. I've been through Guy Morris. I've been through Rich Brooks. I've been through Joker Phillips. I am at Mark Stoops. And, oh, my God, more proud of this team I could not be. As a season ticket holder since 1998, as someone who was in the band in 1993, as a longtime UK football fan and a big-time UK football fan, as somebody who's sat in the rain and the snow and the cold and tailgated and gone to bowl games and just everything and supported this team from I can't even. I can't. I more happy I cannot be. And I love the fact that David Bouvier shopped for a washing machine at Best Buy. I love that kid. And you know what? You know what made my day today? Lamar fumbled again to lose the game.
Did you see him pose? Did you see him fumble?
Thank you.
And
That's so petty.
Sorry.
Oh no! When you were on your Kentucky speech there, though, Carrie, I kind of wanted to get you a tiara. I just felt like you needed a crown. You were just so excited. I wanted to crown you as something. Vinny, your parting shot.
My parting shot is a statement and then a little bit of a ramble and then a question for Jeff. First off, the Eagles are getting on my nerves. Somebody needs to knock them out. I'm sick of the Eagles. The Texans should have beat them. The Rams should have beat them in the regular season. We knew the Redskins wouldn't. But my God, the Bears, I'm sick of Nick Foles and the Eagles. Somebody get them out. Okay. Now, as far as Kentucky is concerned in the SEC, we talked about it. Jeff just referenced the bad loss to Tennessee, and then, of course, they rebounded from that to finish out strong. But, Jeff, if you had to bet any substantial amount of money, how much would you put down on the fact that the SEC network will probably pick South Carolina ahead of Kentucky again, even though they just got beat 28-0 in their bowl game? They just give Will Muschamp another year. We've been beating them since before we got good, but yet they get ahead of us every SEC media day. What are the odds of it happening again, Jeff?
They're going to put them, Mississippi State, Florida. Hell, they might even put Tennessee ahead of us next year.
It's maddening, man. It makes no sense.
You're right.
And my parting shot would have to be the incident that happened, and the Kentucky ties here, of course, are Scott Padgett, who had the displeasure of coaching a game in which Carl Hess was a referee. And I'm not sure what I didn't get to listen to Cameron's show tonight, and Scott, I have to listen on podcast. I'm sure Cameron will get greater details because he had Scott on there. But Carl Hess came over to the sideline, I guess during a timeout. Not sure what he was saying to Scott Padgett, but Scott, according to Scott himself, is like, "Are you stepping to me?"
Yeah.
And my thing is the ACC cut ties with Carl Hess after several really questionable incidents. I mean, in terms of decorum or appropriate officiating behavior. I think it's time the NCAA cut ties. That guy is just disturbed. And I guess he's pretty lucky that Scott Padgett did have a little bit of restraint, because I know I liked Scott's comment, like, what am I? I'm like 6'8" and about 260. He wouldn't do that to me in real life. So I don't know. I'm just over there being no accountability for officiating, that they don't have to answer to anybody. And if I have to see another minute of Doug Schow's watching his butt in a replay, I'm sorry, there's not that much to actually review for the amount of time he spends in front of that. I am convinced he's watching porn. I just am. But anyway, on that, like, really not very nice note, we'll wrap this up. Jeff, let everybody know where they can find you and hear you and all of that. Apparently watching TV. Oh, there, he's muted. He muted himself. Unmute yourself, Jeff, because we can't hear you, but we see you.
He's trying to do it.
How's that?
There we go. Okay. Yeah, now we can. We hated to interrupt our television show, but
this technology stuff is. I figured out how to watch all you guys at once, though, on this, so I got that going for me. So, anyway, I said anytime any of you guys want to come up here to Northern Kentucky, have some bourbon and cigars, just let me know, and we'll just hang out and have fun.
Okay, so that's how you find Jeff Piecoro. You just go to Northern Kentucky with
At Jeff Piecoro at Twitter. I don't
There we
do anything. I just do the Reds and football and some basketball games. That's all. I don't do any of the stuff like you guys.
Well, yeah, like that's like nothing. Okay.
Yeah, but you guys get to express yourself. I just have to talk about a stupid game. You guys have a lot more fun.
Oh, no, my favorite though was in Missouri. I didn't have to wait for the call. That's a touchdown. I love that. Terry, give your information, please.
At tbrown_80. You can find me on Twitter, Vinny and I. He's my main dude with Cats Talk Wednesday this Wednesday. I don't know what's going on. Vinny doesn't text me till like Tuesday afternoon to let me know what's going on, but let me know if we're gonna have a guest or if I'm gonna ramble. But the tbrown_80. We're coming up on the anniversary of Super Bowl 23. Jerry Rice, Super Bowl 23 MVP, 11 catches, 215 yards, and a touchdown, Vinny. So that's where you can find me, walking the mean streets of Twitter.
Okay. And I'm going to go to Vinny kind of out of order just so he can give rebuttal here.
Enough of that Jerry Rice stuff, man. I'll tell you. At Vinny Hardy, Vinny with a Y, Hardy with a Y. Cats Talk Wednesday, like Terry mentioned. And not sure, when I know he knows. Guests pop in, guests call. Sometimes we don't have any. Sometimes we have 2 or 3 or 4. That's how we roll. But we have a ball with it each and every time.
And Sinbad might show up.
And you can also read some great stuff by Vinny and Terry on CameraMillsRadio.com. I have to get that plug in. And Carrie, your information, please.
At GRLS Beer Sports, episodes every Monday evening. We're not necessarily a Kentucky show, although we do talk some Kentucky stuff. But I got some news of the weird. We got some take it or leave it. We're all over the place. And what the guys like to call they call themselves the stepchildren show. Bourbon and Bad Opinions at Podcast BABO. That's on Podbean, iTunes, wherever you can find other podcasts. So yeah, those are my 2 shows. So check them out.
Yeah, I still think I've got to come up with vodka and regrettable decisions, but
I love it. I'll be on that one too.
Anyway, I am Michelle Brown. I'm at Forever Big Blue on Twitter. You could find me on Facebook, but I'm probably hiding from you. Send me a friend request if I'm feeling magnanimous that day. Maybe I'll accept it. On behalf of Kevin Hale, who is Kevin Hale 423, is that right? I didn't look him up. It's some kind of weird number that makes no sense to me. But you can find shooting.
That's my area code. That's my area code down here.
Yeah,
that's what his is. But I don't know.
But you can find Shooting from the Lip all over the place. Find them on Twitter and on Facebook and every platform for the podcast. But for now, this is episode 369. Closing out, we thank all of you for joining us, and you all have a great night.
You the same.
Jeff is the most chill guest ever, dude.
I'm telling you.
So laid back. Chill and mellow, baby.
I'm still trying to figure out the furniture situation. It looked like a jungle gym there for a while, but
this is my room.
I don't know, and I don't want to know.
Okay, there we go.
That's the headboard of the bed.
Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Hey, y'all too. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Chill mode, baby. See y'all.